Alright guys, here it is. Here is my birth story. I wasn't planning to record a birth story, but I wanted to give you a positive birth story, and I'm calling this a positive birth story because even though nothing went the way that I wanted it to, I find that the whole experience was still very positive, and in the end I got such a beautiful gift. So I wanted to share this with you guys because it will definitely empower other women out there who are just about to give birth and just have a little bit of anxiety or stress or nerves going into it, especially when it comes to plans just changing on you. So let's dive into it. What ended up happening is my due date was the 25th of February 2021, and I was actually 9 days over. I had been trying to bring on labour naturally, not really too stressed about it because I was only a couple of days over my due date, and I just believed that nature will do its course and I will have my bub soon, so there was really no stressing myself out. But I was eating the dates, I was doing the exercises, I was having the raspberry leaf tea, all of the things that you're meant to do to bring on labour naturally, I was doing. And I wasn't doing them to an extent where I was stressing myself out, but I was doing them. I went in on the Saturday because I did everything I could to bring on labour, and I just had the worst sleep on the Friday thinking about the what ifs. I thought maybe I can do the stretch and sweep and just have one more go at doing this naturally, or as natural as I could. So I went in on the Saturday at about 3 or 4 p.m. hoping and expecting that we could just do a stretch and sweep and that would initiate labour, and then I would not need to be induced at all. So I went in on the Saturday, the 6th of March, and we did some monitoring again. The monitor showed that every time the baby was sleeping there was drops in the heart rate. And so she came in and she explained that to me, and she explained how she would really like me to be induced. So I said to her I'd really like to do a stretch and sweep to see if that was going to help. She checked my cervix to see how far dilated I was, and I was nowhere near anywhere. I wasn't even thinning. The baby's head wasn't putting any pressure on the cervix to get anything initiated. And so she said even if I came in to do a stretch and sweep, they wouldn't be able to do one that day. So she said, I reckon that you should be induced and we'll do the gel. We'll keep you here overnight, hopefully go into labour naturally anyway through the night. But otherwise in the morning you'll come back in the birthing suite and we'll check your water or break your waters and get going. So at that time I was like, it was very spontaneous, but I was so content because I knew I'd done everything I could to get labour to start naturally, and if the baby wasn't even in the right position, it could have been another week, and that would have been monitoring every day, and I wouldn't want anything to happen with their heart rate or with my placenta. So we decided, yep, okay, we're going to be induced. So I had the prostaglandin gel that was inserted. It virtually didn't feel like anything to begin with, and then like throughout the night it was like this kind of acidic feeling, like a bubbling feeling, but it wasn't painful. But I did start getting cramps and a little bit of back pain and a little bit of like hip flexor pain, which I generally get when I have my periods. So I could tell things were starting to happen because the gel is meant to thin and get your cervix virtually ready. So in this guy I have some Panadeine Fort and some diazepam, I think it's called. I'm not sure whether it's nausea medicine or sleeping tablets. Doesn't matter. I'm going down and I'm going to sleep. Baby's still not here yet. So the next day my partner came back to the hospital. It was just me that stayed that night because we don't have a baby yet, and if anything was to happen they would have called him in, but they just wanted him to get some rest too. So that night I slept on and off. I was excited, but I was more just like, I was so content. It was so strange because it was something that I thought I would just be like in tears about, but I was really good, and just was happy to know that, yep, I did what I could, and this is the plan now. In the end, no matter what happens, I get a beautiful gift at the end. So the next morning, I was taken to the birthing suite. I had some breakfast, like a banana and a piece of toast. My doctor came in at 8:30. She checked me and said I'm definitely like thinning, and she can get just a little bit inside to break my waters. So she did. Just had my waters broken. Yeah, I could see. It was definitely uncomfortable because it's so far up, but it wasn't unbearable. And trying to relax my body and trying to breathe really helped. And then it was just trickle out, and then through contractions that I've been having still, more and more has been coming out. The worst part was putting the drip actually in my hand. I don't know, the nurse may have got the wrong spot, or it's just really difficult to find veins on your hands like that. So I just felt nauseous and overheated really quickly, like I had a temperature. So once I put the Syntocin drip in, they increase it each half an hour, or at least an hour. I don't remember because you're in the zone. It was probably around 11:30 when it really started kicking in. I had a birth plan, so my birth preference, I should say. My birth preference did say, should we wish to have epidural, we will let you know. And I let my midwife know at the very start, considering that this is an induced labour and they've been known to be faster and harder, I really would like an epidural later. What's the process about getting one? Like, is it going to take 2 hours for him to come in, or is it going to just be half an hour? Just so I knew where my pain threshold needed to be. And she said it was a Sunday, so he's at home, but he's really quick to just pop over if I need him to. So I let it be, and I was like, awesome, well, that's most likely what I'd like. She said, did I want it straight away? And I asked the midwife what she thought. She said it would be really good to just feel some contractions first and then decide. And I agreed to that. I thought it'd be really ideal to sort of feel contractions and see how they go, and then request one. My intention was to request one if I was being induced, because I thought natural labour would be so different and be a little bit more progressive, whereas this is going to just come real hard real fast, and it felt like it. It just, like, I started feeling cold first and had the shakes. Since I could see my contractions on the monitor, I knew when my contractions were happening. They said you'll know when you start having real contractions because it'll take your breath away, and for sure. But it virtually just felt all in my back. I felt it all in my lower back and all in my hip flexors, especially my lower back to begin with, and I would just have the shakes, and it was mainly my legs shaking. So each contraction I virtually lost more water from my waters breaking, and they had to change like this sort of pad underneath me every now and then because there was just so much water. I think they were always talking about how much water I had, but anyway, there was lots and lots of fluid that was coming out, and it felt like forever that it just kept coming. It was so cold. We cranked up the heat in the room. I had 2 warm blankets on. I was still shaking. I felt nauseous at the end of each contraction, so I'd feel it all in my back, nothing in my tummy. And then after that excruciating back pain, I would then want to vomit, and I couldn't vomit until it got to about 12 o'clock or something, and then I was able to, probably 11:30, and then I was able to alleviate my tummy by vomiting into a sick bag. After that, I wanted to get off the bed because I knew, okay, now that breakfast is gone and out of the way, I can probably get out and move and try and be in a different spot. However, I was still losing my waters. So I spoke to the midwife and said, I really want to try some different positions like standing or kneeling or something, but I'm still gushing lots of water. And she was fantastic. We got a yoga mat out, we put some pads underneath it, some towels, and she had a birthing bowl come over as well. So I was able to sort of get out of the bed with my IV drip of Syntocin in my hand and lean against the bed, but my legs were just shaking so much, not to the point where I was going to fall over, but to the point where like I just felt feverish in a way. Like I felt so cold and I just could not control my legs. So I tried to stand and lean against the bed. It didn't really help that much, and then I went down to the floor and I leaned against the ball, but because my legs were shaking so much, the ball was shaking and everything was just shaking with it. So then I went down to like a kneeling position just to like get more grounded, and I was still just shaking so much. That's the point where I said to my husband, I really want the epidural now. The pain is just too much, because I know changing positions, like it felt like it was going to alleviate some of the back pain, but it was just getting worse and faster and harder, and it just felt, yeah, pretty painful. So they said, we've got to get you out of your dress then and into a gown, and then we got to get you back into bed. I reckon if you have anything that has buttons, that would be ideal. It was so awkward to try and take my dress off and like feed it through my like IV drip, but my midwives were awesome. They kind of did all the work. I just wanted to protect my hand so nothing sort of ripped out and gushed everywhere. So that was fine. It was so funny apparently to my husband afterwards, because my legs were shaking so much and my backside was out, obviously, because I'm giving birth, and my butt cheeks were just shaking so much. Probably looked like I was in a Shakira video clip, but you know. So I got back into bed. I did a couple of contractions on my side while I was waiting for the guy to come with the epidural, and it was just, they were just getting closer together, and my midwives and even my husband were thinking, oh my gosh, this baby's going to come at like 1 o'clock or something, because my contractions were getting closer. Look, I don't really remember how close they were at this point, because I took nothing in except for breathe, focus through this next one. So I don't really remember how close they started becoming together, but I do remember having less and less time to rest in between them, and it would come like 2 together, and then I'd have a little bit more time, and then 1. Look, if I felt contractions in my belly, I think it would feel so different, but because I felt all my contractions in my back and in my hip flexors, it just felt like every time I'd have a contraction, somebody was sawing away at my back or at my hips, and that was about it. And it would start and then get to a peak and then come back down. And so like getting into that rhythm made me realize, okay, this is only going to last for so long. But it was mainly the shakes in my legs. So the adrenaline from just getting pumped with this hormone would have caused that. So if I didn't have shakes in my leg and I was able to really like breathe and relax, but because my legs were shaking so much and I was like cold, it was so hard to like relax my body. And that's why I thought epidural would be awesome to have, because I can actually allow my body to completely rest, and I know my body needs to rest because something needs to come out, and you know, things need to like soften and open and release, as you would hear all the time in your hypnobirthing classes. And there was no way that I was going to soften. So I asked for the epidural. The guy came around 1, I think. I don't know where 8:30 to 1 o'clock went. That time just felt so fast. So it felt like I was, you know, in it for about 30 minutes before I asked for an epidural. It didn't feel like I was there for hours doing it. So just ignore the clock and just focus on what your body is doing as you go through them. But anyway, a guy came with the epidural. He was talking to me about like obviously the risks that he needs to say, and I just cannot concentrate. I'm trying to look at him because I know I need to acknowledge the fact that there's risks, but I'm just trying to breathe through this contraction at the same time. He was awesome. He was such a cool guy. He was just whistling along as I'm like moaning and making noises. Anyway, I had to sit up on the side of the bed, have my feet on a chair, and I had to like arch over to get the epidural in my back. The epidural does not hurt at all. What hurts probably, or what you focus on, is trying to like be really still through like 3 or 4 contractions. That's probably the hardest part, but you're like laser focused because you know somebody's in your back and you don't want to mess it up and you don't want to prolong it, you don't want to wiggle around and say just wait, you need to just get it. So I was laser focused, not moving. It was awkward too because you got a belly there, so I'm like arched over him inside. We have my oxytocin flowing in there and my fluids. I have my epidural in my back. I have my catheter further down because I need one when you do an epidural. I have my monitors on my tummy. That's for my epidural. That button there, but monitors on my tummy. That is telling me the baby's heart rate and also my contractions. My hair is having a wonderful time. I've got oils. I requested that I wanted to have an upright birth, which meant that they could move the bed so that it was sort of more of an upright position, and I had birthing bars and things like that. So virtually when I was on the epidural, it was lovely, such a nice time. I listened to some music, we had some jokes. I didn't feel anything in my back anymore, and I didn't feel that pain. I could actually feel the tightening of my tummy, which was awesome. So I was able to realize, okay, I'm having a contraction now, I'm going to breathe through it. Even though it's not painful, I know that my body needs oxygen down there. And so what we ended up doing is the nurses gave me a break. My doctor came in and she checked me after my epidural, and I was 5 centimeters dilated. So it was good to know that all the work we did in the morning actually got me to a point where I was about 5 centimeters. But yes, once I had the epidural, couldn't feel really anything. I feel obviously pressure, like if somebody was to like push against, I could feel it, but I couldn't feel warmth or cold or pain or anything. So I still had feelings in my legs. I could move my legs around. My left leg was a bit harder. Sometimes I felt like finding Nemo. I felt like Nemo, just like one leg's not working the same way as the other leg, but I could still move, and that was my intention. I wanted to still be able to sort of move my legs into the position I wanted to be in, but obviously not feel the contractions and not feel any sort of pain, because I knew that being induced probably had high risk of getting forceps or a vacuum or a episiotomy and a tear. So I was like, okay, I just want to be sort of numb down there. There was a time where the nurses came in and said, look, baby seems to be getting a bit sleepy, and that's totally fine. It's normal. The drugs are going to affect the baby at some capacity, but there are little dips again in the heart rate, and she just wants to make sure that the baby wasn't distressed. So instead of rushing me off for a cesarean, my OB wanted to give me the natural birth or the vaginal birth that I desired. So she said there is a distress test that they can do virtually, which means that they come into the vagina and they come in through the cervix, they give a little scratch on the baby's head, they get a bit of blood from that, and then they test the blood to see how distressed the baby is. So I said, yep, go for it. I'd rather that than obviously them saying the baby's distressed and rushing me off to the operation room. So she moved me to my side, got me into the right position, couldn't feel a thing going in, and they said that out of a 10 he was an 8, which means that he wasn't distressed really at all. Most likely he's just grabbing his umbilical cord and just like squeezing it, having a play, rather than actually being in distress. So she said it doesn't seem like there's anything to be worried about, but obviously we will continue to do this like each hour if we need to, if the baby's not showing any sort of improvements with this. And that was fine. So they did that once. I do not even remember what time it was, to be honest, but I know that my epidural had definitely kicked in by then. It's awkward as to just maneuver my body into positions that they needed me to. So there's lots and lots of 3-corner turns, especially with cords and numbness and everything, but you know, it's all just laughable. It was laughable for us. So she came in around 5, and checked me again to see how dilated I was, and I was 10 centimeters dilated. So she said around 6 we'll start pushing, so just take it easy now, try to avoid the urge to push, and we'll get everything ready. So there were midwives in there and everyone's sort of getting themselves all ready to go. We're getting very excited because we're thinking, oh my gosh, this is happening. And there was, beautiful, blissful 30 minutes where I just put my headphones on and listened to my hypnobirthing track. I was so excited, more than anything. And it came to 6 o'clock, and I think we started pushing around 6, and they were definitely different from what I remembered. From what I was told to do when it comes to pushing. So in hypnobirthing class, you were told not to really push, but to just breathe through, allow the contractions and bear down as you go through each contraction to push out your baby virtually. And visualize them coming out through the J shape, through the birth canal, and just breathing through it. But for mine, it was more like, okay, when you have a contraction, hold your breath and push like you're pushing out a poo with all your might. And I was like, okay, this is so different from what I was told to do. And I think at that stage I was like, I'm probably going to tear or need an episiotomy, because there's no way my perineum is going to have a chance to stretch if I'm going to be pushing so aggressively. So we did get into a upright position before we started pushing. I requested birth bars, and she wanted, when my OB came in, she wanted my legs up in stirrups as well. I was happy with that. So it's kind of upright, but a little bit deep, reclined with my hands were ready to go. So it was actually awesome. And then I had one midwife holding my right leg and my husband holding my left, and it was good because I had one of my legs was just shaking nonstop through the pushes, but it was nice to just have somebody kind of hold it. It was really fine doing the pushes, feel a contraction, and I would feel it because they were big contractions by then. They weren't painful, but I could definitely tell I'm tightening. My midwife was still having her hand on my tummy so she could say, all right, time to push. And I was able to push out our little one, but got to a stage where she said, okay, he's getting a little bit tired, his heart rate seems to be dipping, so I would like to use the forceps and give a bit of a snip, like an episiotomy, to get him out a little bit faster, because his heart rate's dropping. Not to the point where it was super urgent just yet, but to the point where, if he got tired halfway down, it would be pretty urgent. And I wasn't tired at all. I was feeling really good. I was feeling really powerful. I was feeling like I was a boxer in a boxing ring, getting through, the pushing stage, and then having that relax and rest each time the contractions would finish. And my husband's got water with me. He's pretending to pat my forehead, you got this. And I just felt really empowered. So I said, can we at least try 2 more pushes and see if that moves him down a bit further in a better position? And so we tried 2 more pushes, and then she still was like, okay, what do you want to do? So I said, let's do it. Let's do the episiotomy and forceps and try and get him out. And I think it was another 2 more pushes, and then she started requesting to vacuum to get a little suction cap. Maybe it was a couple more pushes than that. I don't remember. Most likely it was a couple more pushes than just 2. So she had a little suction cap on, and she did that, and that was a couple more pushes, and I, again, didn't feel anything. There was really no difference between the first couple of pushes and the last couple of pushes. There was times where I was like, oh my gosh, surely his head is there. Surely he's crowning, or surely he's half out or something. I wasn't sure. And then there was, this is a weird moment where he just popped out, and she put him on me, and he was slimy and moving around, and I was just in awe, just held him, and he had pooed as he came out. So so he stunk, but he they tried to get him to cry. He did a few cries, and then he kind of like, just fell asleep or like passed out on me. And she was a little nervous, so she sort of picked him up to take him over to get checked, and immediately started crying again. My husband's trying not to gag because of the smell. So the smell was like a dead fish or something, but he was so beautiful. So once he got cleaned up, he had to get like, vacuumed from his mouth and things like that to make sure he didn't sort of swallow any of the I'm not gonna even try and pronounce it, meconium. So my battery just died on me. We're gonna do the rest on my phone. After an hour and a half of skin on skin, just cuddle time, just saying hello to our little mate. My OB was down there, I just believe stitching up my episiotomy and clearing me out because I wasn't sure, like obviously delivering placenta as well. So we did the injection in my leg to bring the placenta on faster, and I originally wasn't going to do that, but I was like, just get it out. I just want to be done. And anyway, so after the placenta was delivered, after I believe she was stitching up my episiotomy, she let me know she actually was actually teared. It was a partial third degree tear, and she did some work to it to stitch it back up, and I just had to come back and see her in 2 weeks about it and take care of it. There you go. That is my birth story. I am amazed the fact that I was so nervous and scared about having an episiotomy, about having a tear, about going through my labor being induced. Like there were so many things I was afraid of, but I am so content with it. I'm so happy that we had the labor we did, that we had the care that we did, and no matter how the baby comes or what pain relief you use, you get that beautiful baby in the end anyway, and that just makes everything so worth it. So with dealing with things in the moment, I think it's just about letting go, and that's really the hardest part that most people struggle with, is the letting go and just letting whatever happens happen, and just trusting your OB. Like my OB, I just knew that she knew that I wanted a natural birth, or as natural as possible, and so she had the care for me just as much as she had the care for the baby. And that's what I valued, is because she wasn't just all about the health of the baby, it was the health of me too. And that was really nice. So if you have any questions, then please send me a DM, or you can leave me a comment and I will get back to you. But yeah, happy birthing.